Video editing can be really complicated, especially when you get into the longer form storytelling. I've been refining how I do this for a long time. In the last month or so, I've uncovered some new techniques to really help tackle some of these bigger projects. I'm not going to call these steps, I'm going to call these layers, and you'll understand why shortly. Here's my Premiere timeline. As you can see here, it's pretty long. It's an hour, 44 minutes long. When I'm looking at this timeline here, I'm not really seeing a lot. I'm just seeing bars on the screen. The normal process that you would always do is just kind of sift through here and kind of tediously find what you're looking for. This just feels really tedious and annoying. That's kind of what this video is about here. How do you take 2 hours of somebody talking and refine it without losing your mind? The analogy I've kind of thought of in my head is like building a house. Before you frame the house and start putting up walls, you need to do the basics first. You need to flatten the land. You need to install electrical and pipes. You need to pour a foundation. So all of this right here, this work I'm going to show you, these layers are kind of like building your foundation first. In its current form right now, I'm going to call this layer 0. The first thing I would do here, the first layer, would be exporting this as an audio file. From there, I might use a long car ride as an opportunity to listen to it again and take notes, or I may just go for a walk with my phone, headphones in, and listen to the interview front to back. I'll make a note on my phone and put timestamps in it as to what I think the most important parts of the interview were. Then once I have that, I go back in again and I start cutting the video, not cutting things out, but cutting sections and making labels. That's what I would consider my layer 1. So the first thing I did when I started cutting this video was I went through this entire timeline here and cut it into sections. All of these different colors on the timeline indicate a certain part of the story. I wouldn't really even consider this editing. I would consider this like the pre-edit. All I'm really doing here is organizing things, because as you start to build your video, things get a lot more complicated and really hard to find. The first layer here is to really understand your footage first, and then just be really good at organizing it. Here's a note I made one of the first days I started editing this. I have a couple different things here. This is just a sit-down interview, and then here's kind of a candid run-and-gun interview that I did also. After listening to both of these, I kind of decided on 7 or 8 different storylines within the interviews. For each of those, I selected a color and organized it based on that. For me at this point, this is kind of a non-negotiable. This is just how I'm going to continue editing long-form projects like this. From there, the next thing I'm going to do is go in and transcribe everything. Transcription has kind of been a game changer. When you're looking at an interview or something long-form, something as long-form as this, it's really tedious to sit through this entire interview and remember where everything is. But let's say I remember we said something in the interview. Maybe we were talking about the city. I can just type in city and get 11 results of when my subject here talked about the city. Before transcription, that might have taken me hours to find. So what this really is just speed. I can type in something and find it immediately. Once I have everything labeled and once I have everything transcribed, the pre-editing is still not complete. From there, I'm going to start pulling all of the best parts out and putting them into a separate section. This part that I have selected here is the raw interview, and this part over here is everything that I think is important. And then I did the same thing here with the candid interview. These are all the best parts over here cut up into what I think is necessary for the story I want to tell. One of the biggest things here that I've changed is more editing in layers. Not just taking the best parts and putting them all into one project, but separating everything into separate stories. There are probably like 10 to 12 different shoot days for this project. And what I did differently on this one that I really think worked was edit every single day as its own project. It's really easy to get overwhelmed and leave things out just because you have so much stuff to sift through. This is not just organization for organization's sake, but I can go in here and refer to my note. So I can see that purple is the park backstory. I can go in here and look through the purple section. Let's say I wanted to find something about when Devin here was talking about the director of parks. I can just look through here and type in director and find 4 times when he said that. Throughout this entire interview, he might have said director of parks 15 times. Here, once I whittled down what I think is important, he only said it 4. So these are clearly the most important parts of the story. So I'm going to pull from here. It took me around a month to get most of this project done. And now that I remember, the first week or so, week and a half, I spent just organizing things. Everything I've kind of talked about here, where I would go in and label things and kind of find the story within each day, that took me around a week or a week and a half just to do that. The other thing I do is edit in short time blocks. I think people would actually be quite surprised at how short they are. I think we're just conditioned to think that the more you work, the better it will be. I find that just to not be the case. I think focused work is everything. For myself, I feel most productive in the morning. I have all of this energy to create things. But then by the time lunchtime comes, I don't feel like the same person. What I usually do is wake up, kind of assess what I want to do, set my intention for the day, and work on that thing for somewhere in between 2 to 4 hours. I don't look at my phone. I don't check anything. I just focus on what I want to do that day and do it. I don't find that continuing to work through that is ever beneficial in any way. I was really diligent about that on this project, and I never really worked more than 2 to 3 hours at a time. That doesn't seem like a lot, but when you chip away at something every single day, you would be surprised at how much you can get done. As I've become more experienced in this, I feel like I've went from editing top down to editing bottom up. That's kind of why I gave the example of building a house earlier. When I was more of a beginner, the thing I would probably do was actually build my video around music. I do this almost completely the opposite way now. Music is one of the last things I'll put in. I don't really want the music to direct the footage. I don't want the tail to wag the dog. I want to tell my story the way I want to tell it and pair music to that. This was the first project I really started to tinker with stems, which are the individual parts of a song. A lot of the music subscription services offer this now, which I think is awesome. I almost exclusively used songs that offer stems. Here's one of the songs I used, and you can see there's 6 different audio files that make up the song. What this allows you is to customize your video way more than you would have been able to otherwise. This is why big budget shows and movies have custom soundtracks. They're telling the story first and then pairing music to that. As far as how to go from here to here is literally everything I just talked about. Organize your footage, pre-edit everything, understand your story on a deep level, edit everything in layers, and then slowly piece it all together and you can create something like this. Somehow, some way, you keep chipping away a couple hours a day, and over the course of a couple weeks, a month, 2 months, you would be surprised at what you can come up with. The last little thing I've been doing that I don't really hear other people talk about is listening to the project once it's complete. Like I said, the first thing I did when I started editing this was listen to the raw interviews. Likewise, when this project is nearing completion, I'll export the project, listen to it on my phone, listen to it in the car, listen to it on a walk. What I'm finding is that I actually feel like the video should make sense just by listening to it. You shouldn't be confused about anything, especially when you're telling a story. The audio is almost more important, not just the quality of audio, but what's being said. The words that are being said in the story that's being told, you first do it with sound, you first do it with words. That is your first layer, and then you pair the visual to that. For me, if the story doesn't make sense with sound alone, then it's probably something I need to go in and revise. Little techniques like this might seem insignificant, but I find them to have pretty big results. So this process is something I've been refining for a long time. I wanted to share these because I felt like they brought my workflow to the next level. So try them. Tell me if they work for you. Tell me how they can maybe be revised. Tell me what I'm wrong on. And that's it. Later.